And I'm down for you always. The new me is really still the real me. I swear you gotta feel me before you try and kill me. They gotta make the choices. They're running out of options.
God is a God of order. And there's a reason why there's a husband and a wife. And there's a reason why there's a family. And there's a reason why there's certain things you're supposed to do beforehand before you get married. And there are things that you're not supposed to do before you get married.
What's been surfacing about Erika's past has a lot of people talking online. Recently shared text messages, videos, and social media posts have sparked fresh debate, with some users questioning whether there's more to Erika's personal story than previously known. Across different platforms, people have been picking apart old content and sharing their own theories,
LOL.
turning the situation into a major topic of discussion. Many viewers may remember that back in February, Erika faced heavy scrutiny after Candace Owens shared alleged old DMs and Instagram comments reportedly connected to Erika and directed towards someone named Jillian, who was reportedly 15 at the time.
Erika then having sent this 15-year-old to have photos taken. Insane. She sent this 15-year-old to have photos taken. She's helping her because she's just so beautiful get into maybe some modeling. That's at least how she presented it to her. So after telling her how beautiful and perfect her lips were, she then sets her up with a photographer, a friend of Erika's. Erika, she says, arranged the entire thing. And Jillian said that this photographer was kind of creepy. She's trying to remember his name. She says she remembers it began with an R, and he was kind of shorter, chubbier, and yeah, I'd say yeah, Jillian, that's pretty creepy.
Those claims alone created a huge wave of reactions online, but now additional screenshots and comments have resurfaced, bringing even more attention to the controversy. One example that's making the rounds involves a photo posted by a woman in a bathing suit. According to screenshots being shared online, Erika commented, "Are you from the moon? Because your physique is out of this world." Some people see that as playful online banter or a lighthearted compliment between friends. But what really got people talking was a follow-up comment that reportedly said, "All those curves and me with no brakes." Critics argue that the second comment comes across as much more flirtatious than a casual compliment, and that's exactly why these posts have become such a hot topic across social media right now. That same woman later shared a photo of herself doing splits on a tennis court, and once again, Erika was right there in the comments. According to screenshots being circulated online, Erika replied with, "Your court or mine?" That exchange quickly caught attention and gave people even more to talk about. As more old posts resurfaced, online users started connecting every detail they could find. The conversation between Erika and this woman only added to the speculation. The woman reportedly responded with, "I'll show you my ace." And Erika answered, "Good, because the whole world is about to witness it." Those comments immediately became part of the growing discussion spreading across social media. And it didn't end there.
This girl, Jillian, is 15 years old and Erika is 25.
Erika was allegedly leaving other comments like, "Cuff me or nah, your shirt looks a lot like my thoughts, tied up with you," and "Baby girl, those long legs been running through my mind all day." For many observers, those messages sounded far more personal than ordinary friendly banter. Whether the remarks were serious or playful, critics argue that they don't match the very traditional public image Erika has presented over the years, which is why the debate keeps getting louder online. Many critics argue that once Erika became involved with Charlie, her public image seemed to change dramatically. According to people following the story, everything from her fashion choices to the way she presented herself online appeared noticeably different compared to earlier years. That shift has become another major talking point in the ongoing debate surrounding her past. For a lot of observers, the issue isn't necessarily that someone's lifestyle or beliefs can change over time. People evolve all the time. The criticism comes from claims that some parts of Erika's timeline and public statements don't seem to line up.
I would also similarly say that any person who is arranging for photographs to be taken of a 15-year-old girl without explicit permission from that person's mother is a total creep. So Erika, having done this, is completely and utterly creepy. It's creepy. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I will not allow people to say that it makes sense in some contexts. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I asked, did she speak to your mother? She said, no, she never spoke to my mother.
In particular, skeptics have pointed to comments about not dating for several years before meeting Charlie, arguing that certain resurfaced posts have only intensified questions about that narrative. Critics have also pointed to photos that allegedly show Erika with at least 2 different men during the same period when she reportedly claimed she wasn't dating anyone. Those images have been widely shared online, with some people arguing that they raise more questions about the timeline she has publicly described. Then there's an old Instagram caption that reportedly read, "I get so gay off that tequila." According to people who have followed the controversy, comments like that were not isolated incidents and appeared alongside other posts from Erika's earlier social media presence. Since much of that content was later removed, online users have continued digging through archived screenshots and reposting them as part of the larger discussion surrounding her past. The most serious allegations, however, involve claims connected to Jillian, who was reportedly 15 years old at the time. According to statements shared by Candace Owens, Erika allegedly helped arrange a photo shoot involving a male photographer and allegedly suggested that parental involvement was not necessary. These claims remain heavily disputed, but they have sparked intense criticism online. Commentators argue that any situation involving a young person and questions about parental consent deserves careful scrutiny, which is why this part of the story has drawn the strongest reaction so far. Many critics argue that the messages being discussed go far beyond what they would expect from a professional relationship. Some online commentators have described the alleged interactions as unusually personal, pointing to screenshots that have circulated in recent years. In one example reportedly shared by Jill, a message attributed to Erika said, "You have the most stunning features. Your eyes, your lips, your skin. You're absolutely beautiful." According to those sharing the screenshots, the conversations date back to 2013 and 2014, when Erika was working in casting-related roles. The resurfaced messages have drawn significant attention because Jill was reportedly 15 years old at the time. Critics argue that comments such as calling someone a dime piece, sending playful gifts, or making suggestive jokes would be inappropriate in a professional scouting context. One message that has been widely discussed allegedly included the statement, "I don't bat for the other team just yet." That particular remark has become a major focus of the online debate. People analyzing the screenshots have questioned whether the tone reflected appropriate professional boundaries. Meanwhile, posts attributed to Jill suggested that she viewed the connection as meaningful and important. According to screenshots shared online, she wrote things like, "Waking up to a text from Erika Francevy made my day," and "Conversations with Erika Francevy are always the best." Those posts have only fueled further discussion about the nature of the relationship and whether the interactions were handled appropriately. According to the claims being discussed online, Jill was reportedly 15 years old at the time, while Erika was an adult in her mid-20s. For many observers, that age difference is one of the biggest reasons the story continues to attract attention. Critics argue that when an adult develops a notably personal connection with a teenager they do not know well, it naturally raises questions about boundaries and professional conduct. Supporters of Erika have often argued that the messages were harmless jokes or have been taken out of context. However, critics strongly disagree and believe the tone of some of the alleged exchanges deserves closer examination. Because of that, the debate has remained active, with both sides interpreting the same material very differently. Another point some commentators have raised is that the ongoing speculation about Erika's personal life may be distracting from what they see as the more significant issue. Rather than focusing on rumors about her private preferences, they argue the more important discussion centers on how a young, aspiring model was allegedly treated during interactions connected to the industry. That is where many of the toughest questions remain. As more screenshots, posts, and claims continue to circulate, people are looking for clear answers. And when you separate speculation from the facts being debated, the focus returns to one key question. What do the available records and documented interactions actually show? That's where the story gets even more complicated. Critics argue that Erika didn't simply change her lifestyle or public image. She appeared to completely overhaul her online presence. According to people who have followed the controversy, many older posts, comments, and captions that once reflected her earlier social media activity are no longer publicly available. That has led some observers to question why so much content was removed and whether the changes were part of a broader effort to reshape her public image. Many people believe that when someone undergoes a major personal transformation, they often acknowledge their past openly and explain how their views or lifestyle evolved over time. Critics claim that, in Erika's case, there was little public discussion about that transition. Instead, they argue that much of the older content quietly disappeared, leaving others to piece together the timeline themselves. Through archived screenshots and reposted material, supporters say deleting old content is common and doesn't automatically mean anything suspicious. Critics, however, point to what they describe as a dramatic contrast between Erika's earlier online activity and the image she later presented. They reference resurfaced comments, jokes, photos, and other posts that have fueled ongoing debate across social media. According to those examining the timeline, the shift appeared sudden. They argue that one version of Erika seemed visible online for years, and then, almost overnight, a very different public persona took center stage. That contrast is a major reason the discussion continues to generate so much attention today. According to critics, the changes weren't limited to old social media posts disappearing. They point to shifts in Erika's style, public messaging, and overall presentation, arguing that the contrast between her earlier online presence and her later image is difficult to ignore. To them, it looked less like a gradual evolution and more like a dramatic rebrand that happened in a relatively short period of time. What continues to fuel debate is the timing. Critics argue that the transformation appeared to take place around the same period that Erika became associated with Charlie. Because those events seem to overlap, many online commentators have questioned whether the changes were entirely personal or influenced by new circumstances. Supporters, on the other hand, maintain that people change for all kinds of reasons, and that timing alone does not prove anything. As a result, people have developed different theories about what may have happened. One of the more charitable interpretations is that Erika genuinely experienced a change in her beliefs, priorities, or lifestyle after meeting Charlie. Under that view, the issue is not the transformation itself, but how it was communicated publicly. Critics who hold this position argue that if there was a major shift, being more transparent about the past might have prevented many of the questions and controversies that later emerged. That remains one of the central points of disagreement in the ongoing debate. Critics who take the more charitable view still argue that if there was a genuine personal transformation, the controversy stems from how the story was presented afterward. In their opinion, the issue is less about change itself and more about whether important parts of the past were fully acknowledged. They believe that greater transparency could have prevented many of the questions that later surfaced. Others have suggested a very different interpretation. According to this theory, Erika may have recognized that becoming associated with a highly influential public figure could open doors that were previously unavailable. Critics advancing this argument claim that her public image gradually aligned with the values and expectations of the audience surrounding Charlie, leading some observers to wonder whether the shift was strategic rather than purely personal. Supporters strongly dispute that conclusion, noting that such claims remain speculative. A third theory focuses less on Charlie as an individual and more on the opportunities that come with being connected to a major public figure. Commentators who hold this view point out that high-profile relationships can bring increased visibility, larger audiences, and new professional opportunities. They argue that Erika's public profile expanded significantly after entering that world, giving her access to platforms and attention she did not previously have. Critics who favor this explanation believe that a growing public profile can create pressure to maintain a carefully managed image. Because of that, they argue that questions about older posts, comments, and past behavior became especially significant once those materials began resurfacing and attracting widespread attention online. Despite efforts to move past old controversies, critics argue that the internet rarely forgets. Screenshots get saved, posts get archived, and past interactions often resurface years later. That's why the debate surrounding Erika has continued to grow. According to people following the story, old comments, photos, and messages keep reappearing, leading to renewed scrutiny every time new material is shared online. The discussion has also expanded beyond Erika herself and into questions about Charlie's role in the situation. As her spouse and a public figure in his own right, many commentators believe it is inevitable that attention will turn toward him as well. Some critics have asked whether he was aware of the aspects of Erika's past that are now being debated, while others caution that there is no public evidence proving what he did or did not know. Those questions remain largely unanswered. For many observers, the broader issue is one of public perception. If a public figure's brand is built around family, faith, and personal values, then controversies involving a spouse can naturally draw attention to that brand as a whole. Critics argue that any major questions about a partner's past may influence how audiences view the couple's public image, while supporters contend that one person's actions should not automatically define the other. Either way, the ongoing discussion has shifted from isolated social media posts to larger questions about authenticity, transparency, and trust. As more people weigh in, those questions continue to drive the conversation and keep the controversy in the spotlight. Critics also point to Erika's past associations, friendships, and social circles, arguing that they add more layers to the story than the public narrative alone suggests. According to people following the controversy, the relationships and connections linked to her earlier years have become part of a broader effort to understand how her public image evolved over time. Supporters, however, maintain that past acquaintances and social networks do not necessarily reveal anything significant about a person's motives or character. For those who remain skeptical, the issue is that the resurfaced posts, photos, and reported relationships seem difficult to reconcile with certain public statements that were made later. They argue that when all of those pieces are viewed together, the timeline appears more complicated than the straightforward version that was presented publicly. That perception has fueled continued debate across social media and commentary channels. Another criticism frequently raised involves what opponents describe as changing explanations. They point to instances where earlier claims were challenged by newly surfaced photos or screenshots, followed by updated responses or clarifications. Critics view that pattern as evidence that important details may have been omitted, while supporters argue that additional context often emerges over time and that changing explanations do not automatically indicate wrongdoing. Ultimately, the disagreement comes down to interpretation. One side sees a pattern of narrative management, while the other sees an evolving story being re-examined under intense public scrutiny. That divide is a major reason the controversy continues to generate strong reactions online. The Jillian allegations remain one of the most heavily debated parts of this entire controversy. Critics continue to focus on the reported messages, gifs, compliments, and other interactions that have been discussed online for years. They argue that the central question is not just what was allegedly said, but why those communications took place in the first place. According to critics, they have struggled to understand why someone working in a casting-related role would allegedly devote that level of personal attention to a teenager. Commentators have specifically questioned the reported compliments about appearance, the casual tone of the conversations, and the remarks that some people interpret as inappropriate. Critics argue that those interactions do not seem consistent with the professional boundaries they would expect in a scouting or casting context. Supporters of Erika, however, dispute many of the claims and interpretations surrounding the messages, emphasizing that context and intent are important considerations. Another point frequently raised by critics is Erika's public response to the allegations. They argue that many of their questions remain unanswered and that they have not seen the detailed explanations they were hoping for. Supporters counter that public controversies often leave gaps in the record and that outside observers may not have access to the full story. When critics combine these allegations with the other issues they have highlighted, such as resurfaced posts, disputed timelines, and changes in public image, they argue that the result is a pattern they believe deserves closer scrutiny. That combination of factors is why the controversy continues to attract so much attention online. Now, it's important to separate documented claims from speculation. As many people have pointed out, social media can amplify rumors, encourage assumptions, and sometimes turn incomplete information into sweeping conclusions. Not every theory circulating online is necessarily accurate, and not every suspicious-looking detail proves wrongdoing. That distinction matters when discussing a controversy of this scale. What critics often point to, however, are the screenshots, archived posts, photos, and public statements that have been widely shared and debated. Based on those materials, they argue that there appears to be a significant difference between Erika's earlier public persona and the image she later presented after becoming associated with Charlie. Supporters disagree with many of those conclusions, but the contrast itself has remained a major topic of discussion. Another recurring criticism is that Erika has never fully addressed what critics see as inconsistencies between those two versions of her public identity. They argue that the unanswered questions surrounding that transition are what continue to fuel interest in the story. For many observers, the issue comes down to authenticity and whether the public was given a complete picture of who she was and how her life evolved over time. That brings the debate to its central question. Was this the story of a genuine personal transformation? Was it a calculated rebranding effort? Or are people drawing conclusions from incomplete information? At this stage, there are still gaps in the public record, and many of the strongest claims remain disputed. The reality is that outside observers do not have every piece of the puzzle, which is why the controversy continues to generate so much discussion and speculation online. Critics argue that the evidence and claims discussed throughout this controversy simply do not align with the public narrative Erika has presented over the years. In their view, each newly resurfaced screenshot, photo, or archived post adds another layer of scrutiny and makes the broader story more difficult to reconcile. Supporters strongly disagree, but the ongoing stream of material being shared online has ensured that the debate remains active and highly visible. Those who remain skeptical often point to several recurring themes: deleted social media content, disputed timelines, questions surrounding past relationships, and the allegations involving Jillian. They argue that these issues, taken together, create a pattern that deserves closer examination. Critics believe the contrast between Erika's earlier online presence and her later public image raises legitimate questions about how that transformation occurred and whether the public was given the full picture. At the center of the controversy is a larger question about authenticity. Critics contend that the discussion is no longer just about old comments, past behavior, or rumors about her personal life. Instead, they see it as a debate over whether the image Erika has presented, her values, beliefs, personal journey, and public identity, accurately reflects her history. Supporters, meanwhile, argue that people can genuinely change and that critics may be drawing sweeping conclusions from incomplete information. The truth is that many of the claims remain contested, and not all questions have been answered publicly. As a result, the conversation continues to grow, with strong opinions on every side. Now, we want to hear from you. After looking at the claims, screenshots, public statements, and reactions surrounding this story, where do you stand? Do you believe Erika experienced a genuine transformation, or do you think there are still major unanswered questions? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because this is one debate that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. If this video got you thinking, raised new questions, or made you take a second look at the story, make sure to hit that like button. It helps more people discover the video and jump into the discussion. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time to join the channel, because there's plenty more content and analysis on the way. Share this video with anyone who might find the topic interesting, and we'll catch you in the next one.